So I'm here at Terramar, and we're going to do a kind of a night shoot, mostly looking at how we can do painting with light. So I'm just waiting for the sky to kind of drop a little bit further. It's just starting to, the sun's just going down, and we're moving into kind of the blue hour. So we've got another maybe 20 minutes or so before it gets dark enough to really do our shooting. So we'll kind of wait it out. So as we're waiting for the light to drop a little bit more, I'm just going to take a few photos. Right now, because the sun just, if we look over this way, because the sun just went all the way down, we now have got a little more soft, even light, and it's really nice for landscape. So we're inside the Yammer right now, and we're just waiting for the light to drop a little bit further because it's not quite dark yet. So let's take a quick look at our exposure settings. Currently the ISO is at 185, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that down to as low as it'll go, 32, so that makes it a little bit darker. But we're going to want to get our exposure up to at least a second, so we've got the most amount of time possible for our long exposure. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this all the way to 1 second. It might give me a hard time at first. You can see it's too much exposure, so we still got to wait for that light to drop a little bit further so that we can actually do the exposure. The other thing that I want to take a quick look at is my focus, so I'll bring this back for a second. Now, one of the things that's nice about Yammer is it does have an option for focus. So I'm going to click here on focus, and I'm going to lock the focus. And so when I do that, I can use this slider here, and I can move it back and forth so I can see it was, blurry, sharp, blurry, and so I can kind of fine-tune that until I've got it as sharp as possible. And I really want that background area to be nice and crisp. I'm going to be, doing some painting with light in that back area over there. So once I've got that, I can keep it locked, and so the focus will stay there from here on out. A couple other things we need to set up. Let's make sure that our Bluetooth is connected. So we looked at this earlier, and let's look at our Bluetooth settings. I'm going to flip the little switch on, and let's check Bluetooth. And so it's looking, that's the shutter, says it's connected. Okay, great. So then I can swipe up. Let's go back inside of Yammer. And just to make sure, if I click, that took a picture. Okay, great. So we're going to need that. So I'm going to check a couple of things before it gets all the way dark. So let's take a look and see if that worked okay. I clicked the shutter a few times. So let's see. So that was our first one testing it. So there I am. There. Okay. Still in the frame even over there. Okay, great. So that's what we need to know. We kind of want to know what is our framing so that we make sure that we're inside the picture when we actually do the painting with light. So that's great. So let's go back to here. And again, let's check our exposure one more time. It's locked. I'm going to go ahead and drag this down. Keep dragging it down. So I'm going to try to get to a second. You can see it's still a little bit bright, so we'll come back in a few minutes. So one of the things we're going to be doing is basically I'm just using a regular, just a small flashlight, just like a little 99-cent flashlight from Walmart. And we're going to be using that to be basically, drawing, or moving during our exposure time. And our exposure is going to be a longer exposure. It's going to be, up to a minute, or sorry, 1 second. So it's as long as we can make our camera go. And so during that time, we want to make a movement with that light, pointing it towards the lens. And that's going to then get recorded during that length of time. Now, there's two ways we can do painting with light. So that's one way, is to move it while we're actually doing our exposure time. The other thing is we could have a long exposure and point it at our area over here, do a little bit over here, and build those up as well. So we're going to have to do it in little sections, but that's what we're going to be using, is just a regular flashlight. So you can see now our exposure with check is now at our ISO 32, which is our lowest, and our shutter speed is at 1 second, which is also our lowest. And we're starting to get actually really good exposure. Although what we really want is for it to go a little bit darker so that we're going to show up okay on there. So, we're right about that time where the light's continuing to drop. We've got just maybe another 5-10 minutes for it to drop a little bit lower so that it's dark. I do want it to build up a little bit of exposure in the background, but I want it to feel relatively dark. So we'll wait just a few more minutes and get ready to start shooting. so just so you can see, you know, the sun is now completely gone down. Let's bring the exposure down a little bit. You know, the sun has set. It's probably about, you know, maybe 15 minutes or so after that sunset. We're not quite to last light yet. You know, it's just kind of that late evening time. We're just waiting for that last little bit of light to kind of drop out of the horizon and give us a little bit more darkness so that we can do our painting with light. So before it gets completely dark, I'm just going to do a quick test to see how it looks. Alright, so it's getting nice and dark, so we'll just keep shooting. So because we have to write backwards, so I'm going to start on the left-hand side over here, but write the letters in a backwards fashion. Alright, so let's just try one last time. So let's experiment a little bit with what happens when we shine the light at the actual subject. So there's our base exposure. You see a little bit of light showing up over there. So then what we can do is, as we do our exposure, we can move the light kind of in this area, and then in the next exposure, you know, maybe we can light this area here. And then maybe in the next exposure, maybe we paint maybe over in here. And then maybe in the next one, you know, we paint maybe over in this area. And then maybe we get the foreground a little bit. And I'm going to go behind that rock and maybe do a couple as well.